Um, can you all see my slide?
Boleh, boleh.
Okay, thanks. So yes, just like what the MC presented earlier, I actually came from the finance industry, several years of experience as a dealer myself, like our presenters earlier this morning. And then after that, I joined UMT, pursued my master's and PhD, and I got an offer to rejoin the finance industry, part-time that is, with the permission of UMT, as a director and financial planner of a licensed financial company. So at the same time, I also have experience as a board member of the Malaysian Financial Planning Council. And at UMT, I also handle the endowment fund. If you are familiar with UMT endowment, including the Derma Siswa endowment, so I led that one as well. So in my professional careers, I have monitored, advised, and executed trading transactions in total, I think worth several hundred million ringgit. But yeah, right now I'm a lecturer and researcher at UMT, and I'm also attached with the Victoria Institute of Strategic Economic Studies, Victoria University, Australia. So without further ado, I just pursue this. I would like to pursue this topic actually to continue with this topic on even though the proposed topic is only on technical analysis, it is undeniable that market efficiency is key as well. And I think most of the audience today are bachelor degree in economics students, right? So I'm sure most, if not all of you, are familiar with the concept of efficient market hypothesis. So market efficiency is on the other side of technical analysis. I mean, it's an opposite view. All right. So what happens is I cannot speak about technical analysis actually without talking about market efficiency. So what happens is what I'm going to do. Firstly, I'm going to briefly present on the efficient market hypothesis. And then in part 2 of my presentation, I will continue with technical analysis or behavioral finance. Keep in mind as well that behavioral finance on its own is considered as a field. At the same time, some of prominent researchers as well, actually, they use the term behavioral finance and technical analysis interchangeably. What it means is that you can also use BF, behavioral finance, there to refer to technical analysis. I'm sorry, just a sec. Okay. So just some brief background of market efficiency. Now, before I continue, how many of you have not heard of this term, market efficiency or efficient market hypothesis? We have lots of participants here, 119 now. So all of you have heard this concept, yeah? If Dr. Zai doesn't mind, can I choose one of the students here to briefly explain the concept? I just want to see how far you understand this concept.
Mungkin quite new to them like this concept because kita dalam kita punya konteks syllabus EMH is not really touch
I see,
ataupun tak
okay.
really emphasize lah dalam kita punya syllabus.
I see, okay.
Tapi mungkin some of them have heard about EMH. Yeah.
Okay, okay, it's okay then. Thanks, Dr. Zai. Very quickly, yeah. According to Paul Samuelson, which is a Nobel Prize winner, he said that finance or financial economics is actually the crown jewel of social science. Obviously, in social science, you have many fields, right? Like marketing, accounting, and so on. finance or financial economics is considered as the crown jewel. And according to Professor Low from MIT, part of that really significant thing about finance is actually efficient market hypothesis. So this is a very, very key subject, because what happens is everything, even in other fields such as accounting, for instance, most of the things when they do things such as value relevance or firm value, Tobin's Q, and so on, most of the research actually um, consider or assume that the market is at least semi-strong efficient. So because of that, right, this is a very key topic. But this actually relates to my presentation today as well. So what is the role of capital markets? Efficient market means that it allocates funds to their most productive users. Okay, that is one way to look at it. But in terms of publicized price, the market prices that you see earlier, that you have the trading platform, you can see the market price, real-time prices of the securities traded in Bursa Malaysia. If the market is efficient, you believe that the price to be very close to its true or intrinsic value. So intrinsic value, there are many other terms that you can use to refer. Okay, true, intrinsic, fundamental, fair value. There are many things, many terms that you can use interchangeably as well. So earlier today, there was a presentation on fundamental analysis. So fundamental analysis is one of the ways, such as dividend discount model, free cash flow model, and so on, whether it is top down or bottom up, in order for you to find the true value of the security. So what does it mean by true value? For example, let's say Petronas Dagangan, I don't know the current stock price, but let's say Petronas Dagangan is currently trading at 15 ringgit. When you do some calculation, you know that the price actually should be 30 ringgit. Okay, just an example. So it means that the market is not really efficient, right? Let's say your calculation or your modeling is correct, then the market is not efficient because it is only selling at 15 ringgit, where the correct price should be 30 ringgit. Look at it another way. Let's say you want to buy a brand new Ferrari, right? And let's say I want to sell you a Ferrari, a brand new Ferrari, at only 50,000 ringgit. Do you think that is the correct price or not? Obviously, it's not, isn't it? Because you know that a brand new Ferrari should be selling at about, say, 2 million ringgit. So the market is not efficient in that particular example, all right? Or I'm not efficient, or maybe I'm not rational. That is another way to look at it. So advocates of behavioral finance, when you look into both finance and psychological perspective, argue that prices of not only equity but other securities as well can actually deviate, right? It doesn't have to be always the same or close to their true or intrinsic values. So Bursa Malaysia actually promote market efficiency. Why? Because if the price is not true, it doesn't reflect the fundamentals of the company, then people can first exploit the prices, and second is in terms of production or in terms of investment from the side of the company. If you look into the capital budgeting, then the cost of capital doesn't really reflect the prices. So this market efficiency can also allow for more informed investment decision, because you know that what you are paying for is the right price, isn't it? You don't want, for example, to buy an ice cream for 1,000 ringgit, isn't it? A simple ice cream like the Cornetto and so on. You don't want to buy it at 1,000 ringgit because you know it is not the true price. It's the same as securities as well. Whenever you want to invest in stocks or bonds and so on, the price should technically be close to its fair value. So very briefly, EMH is actually was developed by Professor Eugene Farmer, which is widely considered as the father of modern finance, and he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2013. What it means is that this is a theory which says that securities are actually in equilibrium, and the prices fully reflect all available information, and they will react swiftly to new information. So let's say the company, you heard that the director just passed away, or it involved in crime activities and so on. So the price of that particular stock should react quickly to that available information. I don't want to go into too much detail about this part, but this market efficiency can actually be presented as the following mathematical formula on the expected price or return, and then you're going to have the expectation operator as well as the set of relevant information depending on the form, or because we're going to look into the three forms of efficient market hypothesis after this. So again, this is just a quick reference to what we discussed just now. Prices reflect all available information. So the price change is until expected returns are exactly commensurate with risk. This is another important factors in finance as well, where risk and return are needed to be explored and to look into together whenever you want to do an investment. So as a simple example, if I ask, maybe I'm just going to ask one of the students here, one of the participants, let's say Jessica Cannon. Jessica Cannon, can you hear me? And after this, Dr. Zai, lots of students will leave this presentation because they're afraid I will call out their names.
Just call out their name. They get used to it, I think.
Okay.
Because yeah, that
I
what
think
I
maybe
also
that,
do.
all right, maybe there's something wrong with the mic, or because it's still muted. But what about Ju Hee? Ju Hee, can you hear me? So the students are not answering. Is it normal for the class? To be honest, in our class, it's normal like this as well. Like suddenly the students leave. I don't know why. Maybe they are afraid to answer the
Maybe
questions.
it's something new for them, like they're not familiar with the concept, so
Yeah,
not confident to
it's okay.
guess
Maybe,
what's new.
yeah, maybe I'm gonna ask Dr. Jaharuddin because he looks very very smart there. Dr. Jaharuddin, and Dr. Jaharuddin is also not here. Maybe emergency. It's okay. All right. What I wanted to ask is a very simple question. You don't have to worry if you get this wrong. But let's say if I ask you to do a simple task, to just go for like a food panda, buy some food and then send it to a people's house, you're gonna expect to earn, let's say, 10 ringgit per trip. I don't know how much. I'll just making this up, all right? So let's say 10 ringgit per trip. But if I ask you to go to the river here, and we know that we have crocodiles here in the river, and if I ask you to swim in that river, how much do you expect me to pay you? Is it 10 ringgit? Is it cheaper than 10 ringgit? Or is it higher than 10 ringgit? So if you are rational, you know that it is very risky, right? In order for you to swim across the river, swarm with crocodiles. So because of that, if you are rational, yeah, you're gonna expect me to pay you much, much higher, isn't it? Instead of paying the same as 10 ringgit for people, just sending food via Food Panda. So that is the concept of risk and return. So basically in finance, it's very basic. Higher risk, you're going to expect higher return, and vice versa. So again, prices at times can deviate from their true values and can adjust quickly as well. So what it means is that the trader cannot consistently, right? Consistently means that sometimes maybe they can by accident, by chance, but if the market is efficient, or the strong proponent of efficient market hypothesis will argue that you cannot consistently make abnormal returns after you deduct the transaction costs as well as considering the relevant risk for that particular investment. So in terms of information, earlier today, Dr. Zai also presented that information now is at your fingertips, isn't it? You can access everything using your mobile phone if you have some access to database and so on. So information gathering is motivated by desire for higher investment returns, isn't it? Otherwise, you will not bother looking for this information or do some mathematical modeling and analysis. You are doing that because you expect by doing so, you can earn higher returns. And the marginal return on research activity may be so small, and only managers of the largest portfolio will find them worth pursuing. Because why? You need, one is perhaps the database, and you need the team. You need to spend some efforts and to pay the salaries and so on. If the market is fully efficient, you don't even need to bother doing this stuff, isn't it? Because what's the purpose? At the end of the day, prices already reflect all available information. So these are the three forms of efficient market hypothesis. Weak form is if you all the historical patterns and previous prices and volume data is already reflected in the price. So what happens is that even if you do some technical analysis, you are not expected to get abnormal returns. Semi-strong form is to consider all publicly available information, which includes historical data as well as other publicly available information such as the fundamental data, corporate governance, SDG, ESG, environment, social and governance, CSR, those kind of stuff. Now, strong form efficiency means that prices also reflect private information, not only public. Yeah, private means something which is known only to insiders, such as a director of companies and so on. Okay, so this is highly unlikely, right? But most of the developed countries, the US, Australia, the UK, for instance, they are normally considered semi-strong form efficient. Okay, so for developing or emerging markets, there are still some pockets of inefficiency where traders may be able to exploit subject to maybe more advanced technical indicators or fundamental strategies. So this is just a summary. You can see it graphically that the weak form means all prices and returns and volume data as well, yeah, not only prices. Public available information is again fundamental information, macroeconomic indicators, industry indicators, and ESG, SDG, and so on. While strong form also includes private, which is insider information. Right. So in terms of under or overreaction, this is important point as well that I want to highlight is very quickly, yeah? If the market is efficient, again, by now I hope you understand the concept that the price react swiftly and quickly to changes or information. So you can see that when any information is announced, let's say this is a good news, yeah, the company is making profit. So quickly the price will go up because the market is efficient, isn't it? But if it is delayed response, it means that the market is not really efficient. Then you can see this one, yeah. It takes some time for investors to react. So what it means is that if there is a slow reaction, you can gain some profit if you can exploit it sooner, because you know that it will reach this part, and then you already know that it should be this because you are among those efficient ones, right? Or you are the advanced and knowledgeable ones. You know that it will reach this point, yeah, this price level, but stock price reacts slowly here. So maybe you bought it here, for instance, yeah, you bought it here and you can still make profit. But if the market is efficient, then you can't, isn't it? Because immediately here it's already reaching this stock price, you can no longer make any abnormal profit. Overreaction means that people tend to think that, oh, this is a very good news, but it shouldn't be this level. And then slowly the price will go to its real or intrinsic price or value. Okay. So this is just the response to bad news. Is just the other way around. So far, do you have any question about this? All right, no question then. So what is the implication now? This part is important. Earlier today, we have gone through the presentation about fundamental analysis, about how information are widely available, isn't it? The CIMB also provided all these reports and so on. So if the market is efficient, if the investors can use all this information to process and then decide when and where to invest, then what would happen? Do you think you can still make profits or abnormal returns from that investment? Now, new information is unpredictable, isn't it? You cannot expect that the company will suddenly issue their statement saying that they're making lots of profit, unless, of course, if you have insider information. So because of that, right, stock prices actually follow a random walk. Now, if the market is efficient and the price fully and fairly priced, what it means is that you, as an investor, should not really waste your time to look for mispriced securities, which is fundamental analysis, and you should not also waste your time to do market timing, which is technical analysis, because what's the purpose, isn't it? The price is already correct. So what it means, fundamental and technical analysis are deemed useless, and then the best investment strategy whenever the market is deemed as efficient would be to simply diversify your investment. Surely you have heard of the idiom that you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, isn't it? You should properly diversify in order to reach the best risk-return trade-off. Okay. So the investment implications again is that expensive strategy for active might be suitable only for very large portfolios, and fundamental and technical analysis is actually useless. And then you can, in this particular case, actually accept EMH, and then you should invest in index funds or exchange traded funds, which is a low cost investment. And of course, you can do portfolio management or portfolio diversification strategy or portfolio optimization in order for you to get the appropriate return for a given level of risk, or the lowest risk for a given level of return. Okay. So we're going to take a quick, I think, if it is okay with you, Dr. Zai and MC, maybe 5 minutes break. And then we're going to continue with the main topic, which is behavioral finance and technical analysis.
Doktor boleh.
Okay, thank you. In the meantime, it might be good as well if you want to go through some of the materials online, or some charts and so on, if you are interested to do so. Okay, just a quick 5 minutes break. I have to rest my voice actually. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Safwan dia tak berapa sihat tu sebenarnya. Tetapi thank you Dr. Safwan. Walaupun dia tak berapa sihat, dia masih lagi dia spend some time untuk explain dia punya part tu. Mungkin saya boleh tunjuk sedikit lah kot berdasarkan Dr. Safwan punya penerangan ini. Yang macam mana kita kata efficient market hypothesis tu, adakah masih apply ke dalam tempoh sekarang ini? Ya, kita boleh tengok reaction daripada recently ada announcement of quarterly reports kan. Maksudnya company start announce dia punya earnings. Sama ada mereka buat keuntungan ataupun tidak. Kita boleh tengok sikit. Ini saya prefer untuk pergi ke Malaysia Stock Base lah. Kita boleh lihat contoh dekat home ini. So ini latest announcement by companies in Malaysia. So quarterly earnings kita boleh pick mana company yang buat in past week, yang buat untung yang kau tinggi, yang ada star tu. Macam mana market react dengan good news bila dia buat untung yang luar biasa. Ke belakang sikit. Oh, ni CIMB. Oh, tu dia. Sebaik orang CIMB tak ada kat sini. Tak pernah dia good earnings.
Share slide ke, Doktor?
Oh, sorry. Saya lupa nak share. Sorry.
Okey, Doktor.
Sementara tu Safwan tengah rest kejap tu kan. Ni. Okey. Kita buka WhatsApp pula. Okey. Saya boleh nampak dekat sini. Ini quarter report dia keluar kat sini. Q maksud dia quarterly report keluar kat sini. So, you nampak apa jadi kan dia react juga, market react, tapi saya rasa quite strong lah kat sini reaction untuk CIMB punya report. Tapi kat sini bila dia every time dia announce report akan ada reaction walaupun ini red kan. So ini dia buat green, memang untung, dia kata untung lebih daripada biasa. Bila ada star ni maksud dia buat untung luar biasa lah ni. Ada double star kat sini maksudnya profit dia pun meningkat dengan kadar yang dramatik. Begitu juga dengan revenue dia. Boleh nampak ada star kat sini. So this is a signal of, this is actually a good signal to the market bila ada star macam ni. 1043% dia buat keuntungan CIMB ya. So market react. Market react. As you can see dekat chart ni. Dia problem ni sebab dia banyak iklan kat sini. Okay, nampak tak? So, misalnya daripada dekat sini kan, punya price, and then market react dan harga dia naik. So, itu contoh lah nak tunjuk macam mana market dia incorporates the information, dia react. Okay, with public information sebab corporate announcement like quarterly report, annual report ataupun news adalah publicly available information. Sebab tu saya kata semua dekat ujung jari je sekarang ni kan. You buka je CIMB, klik je mana-mana company, terus nampak. Tapi ni tak syariah ya. Terus nampak dia punya news dan sebagainya, latest announcement dia, latest headline. So maksud dia, ini semua adalah maklumat-maklumat yang penting yang ada pemberatnya. Okay? Ada pemberat untuk pasaran lah. So investors, sebab tu bila you jadi investors, you jadi traders, you akan ada habit untuk check news. So almost every day. I do that almost every day lah, especially before going to bed. I will maksudnya open my KL Screener apps tu, so saya akan scroll down tengok news. Maksudnya saya nak tengok apa peluang yang saya boleh ambil esok tu. Okay, so you will have this habit if you start trading. Sebab apa? Bila you put some capital in certain stocks, you want to make sure that you manage the risk kan. You tak nak lah biar, sebab you tak nak lah biar maksudnya modal you hangus. So you kena berhati-hatilah kalau ada news yang tak baik ataupun kalau ada good news, you can take opportunity out of that. Maksudnya kata sentiment lah. Sebab sentiment leads into market. Sentiment leads to market. I think that's it lah for now.
Thank you, Dr. Zai. Now, Dr. Zai actually can just continue with the presentation for this topic as well.
Tak apa, sambung lah teori dulu.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Zai. By the way, it's interesting as well, the one that you showed earlier, and there's a question there if I can help answer as well. Kalau tengah naik macam tu, one of the comments there in the chat box, kita invest elok ke, tapi bukan time tu harga tengah tinggi sebab dia naik. So what happens is, this is why you need knowledge of both fundamental and technical. For me personally, I don't think it is wise if a person only look at fundamental or technical analysis. They should be looking at both. Yeah. So in this particular case, whether it is good or not, first you have to identify what is the intrinsic value, or what is the fair price of that particular stock given the information that was disclosed. So for example, if you do some analysis and then you find that the price is currently going up, but it is, let's say, at 30 ringgit, but the price that most analysts expect will be around 40 ringgit. So you know that even though it's still going up, you still have some buffer that you can make profit out of it from. At the same time, you also have to look into some technical indicators as well, because you want to see how the trend is going. Because maybe one day it will reach that 40 ringgit price, but in the short term, maybe you might be losing some money as well, and you don't have the time or sufficient fund in order for you to get exposed to that potential risk. Okay, there are many things that you have to consider whenever you do this. That is just one of the things. So if I can just continue with the presentation, yeah, Dr. Zai?
Sure.
Okay, now the reason why I explain about market efficiency is, again, if the market is efficient, then what we are doing so far today, like the presentations just now on fundamental analysis, what I'm doing right now on technical, as well as the one that Dr. Zai presented just now as well, it is not really useful, isn't it, if the market is fully efficient. But you can see at the chart that Dr. Zai shared earlier, it's not quickly, isn't it? The price doesn't move quickly to that level. So you can see there's a slow trend, going up, and you can infer that the price or the market in Malaysia is not really fully efficient. There are still possibilities for you to make profit out of the inefficiency that you can find. A very quick history of technical analysis before I continue with the indicators being used and the normal indicators being used in practice. So technical analysis is actually not new. All right. So it actually began being used by ancient societies long ago, when they used these past prices in order to forecast future returns. So in short, basic forms of technical analysis was already being used by ancient civilizations almost 3 millennia ago. In the 7th century BC, there you can see ancient Babylonians. I think you have heard of Babylons, yeah? Ancient Babylonians already used technical analysis, the basic form of technical analysis, in order to forecast commodity prices. So after that, throughout the ages, technical approach has been used by the Western worlds, including the Greeks and Romans, and then they moved to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, and then after that to the Asian countries. So I think some of you have already familiar with this candlestick. So candlestick was actually developed in the 18th century by Munehisa Homa, which is actually a Japanese rice trader. So these candlestick charts are still being used right now, isn't it? You have the open, high, low, and then you have the, lots of combinations of using these chart patterns, like the moon, the doji, and so on, right? And then in 1834, Charles Dow developed the Dow theory, which is the average. Now, this is actually the origin of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which is the 30 largest stocks in the US market. So, in Malaysia, we have the FTSE Bursa Malaysia KLCI, the largest 30 stocks in Malaysia. Earlier, the CIMB presenter already said that Mr. DIY is now will be the constituent, one of the constituents of the KLCI. So the Dow Jones started from this Charles Dow, who developed this average. And then in Australia, we have the ASX, for instance, ASX 200. New Zealand, you have the NZX50 and so on. Okay. In the 20th century, then you can see lots of development of many modern indicators such as the moving average, simple or exponential, the moving average, convergence, divergence, relative strength index, average true range, Bollinger Bands, etc. Why? Because during this time we are lucky to have this modern PC, as well as lots of applications that most people have, such as Excel, isn't it? Now, starting from the early 21st century, you have more and more advanced and sophisticated software available that you can use, as well as programming language such as C Sharp, Python, R, and software such as MATLAB and so on, isn't it? And then, of course, another big development is AI, artificial intelligence, as well as big data. So this actually also being used in order for you to formulate the technical indicators and to forecast prices of relevant securities. So what is technical analysis actually? It is basically the study of past market behavior to determine the current state or condition of the market. So technicians actually believe that any price influencing factors, whatever factors that influence price, such as fundamental, psychological, etc., is actually already reflected in that particular stock price. So because of that, since they assume that all of the factors are already reflected in price, a pure technician doesn't really look into fundamentals. Why? Because the fundamentals are already reflected in price. So the only requisite is just they want to study the market itself, which is the price and the price patterns and the formulation, rather than looking into the annual reports and so on. So what are the principles of technical analysis? The first one is prices move in trends, obviously, isn't it? Even if you see the small chart there, if the price doesn't move in trend, then what's the purpose of technical analysis, isn't it? You expect that there are some trend that can capture the price movements that you can then make some prediction and make money from it. The market discounts everything. It means that whatever information, fundamental, economics, psychological, is already reflected in the price. And another thing, the important thing is history tends to repeat itself. That is why you have what you call the chart patterns, isn't it? If it doesn't repeat itself, you don't have the patterns. So because of this history that keeps on repeating itself, then you can look into these familiar patterns in order for you to use and find whether you should buy or sell the stock given this particular pattern. So a quick bits. Stock prices is basically a function of demand and supply, isn't it? It is solely the interaction of demand and supply that actually set the prices of stocks. So supply and demand are actually governed by numerous factors, both rational and irrational. And the market continually and automatically weights all these factors. Let me use this pointer. Okay. So if you disregard minor fluctuations in the market, stock price actually tend to move in trends, which actually persist for a certain length of time. That is why you call it trends. And this is actually relevant for pattern formation. And these changes in trend are actually caused by shifts in demand and supply. So these shifts, no matter why they occur, because again, you remember, one of the consideration or assumption of technicians is that prices discount everything, can actually be detected sooner or later in the action of the market itself. So if you look into technical analysis and behavioral finance versus fundamental analysis, is it versus? It is not actually versus, yeah. Technicians actually do not deny that fundamentalists can find the intrinsic value of stocks. But what happens is they believe that if you look into the fundamental itself, it is very slow to determine that particular value of stocks. That is why normally if you look into fundamental analysis, you are actually investing in the long term, isn't it? So technical analysis is more towards the short-term investment rather than the long-term ones. So in short, there are actually two forms of technical analysis. The first one is subjective analysis, which is charting. And normally this one is subjective interpretation. I myself, actually, if you ask me, even though I come from the industry before and I still do research in this area, I don't really like subjective analysis. In fact, if you want to publish papers, research paper, that is journal articles, if you are using subjective analysis, it is very, very tough. And not many papers, especially in good journals, are published focusing on subjective analysis because it is subjective. Yeah. And this is different to objective analysis, where you actually use some mathematical equations, and this allow you to do the proper analysis and you can validate it as well. So it's a stark difference between subjective and objective analysis there. So in terms of technical indicators, obviously this is, I think, why you come here. There are actually hundreds or perhaps thousands of chart patterns, yeah, and technical indicators that actually investors claim work. So these are the very basic and very, very simple and popular ones. And I think lots of you students have heard of this. And I'm sure most of the lecturers also are very familiar with these indicators as well. The first one is simple moving average, and the formula is very simple as well. You have the moving average convergence, divergence, relative strength index, and average true range. Now, these are the basic ones, but they are still very popular and being used widely by investors in Malaysia as well. Yeah, in one of my Telegram groups, I have lots of active investors. Yeah, they are actually part of the team with, I don't remember, the like Zairihan and two or three very prominent technicians in Malaysia. Yeah, and earlier, Dr. Zai also explained, yeah, how not only you can make money, 10% per annum, but also in a few days. That is true, actually. In my group, some of my friends actually they can earn 7-8% in just 1 or 2 days. But they can also lose money. Yeah, that is why some risk management strategy is also important, which I will show after this as well. Keep in mind as well, yeah, if you are guaranteed to make money, it is no longer Sharia compliant. Because investment in Islam, yeah, you should be exposed to both risk and return. If it is guaranteed, if the return is guaranteed, even the Sharia Advisory Council will not approve it as a Sharia compliant investment. So you have to keep that in mind first. So what you can do is you can minimize your loss. Okay, you cannot guarantee that you will earn profit, but you can minimize your loss by having some risk management strategy. Anyway, about moving average, this is the most popular one. You have the average price of a given interval, and then you have this particular window is updated over time. I'm going to show you after this. Yeah, you don't have to worry. These sentences are not quite clear, but once you see the example after this, it's much clearer. And then again, you want to identify underlying price trend. And then some examples of the moving averages are these ones, yeah, the simple ones. And then you have the exponential moving average, where you have the more recent data, you assign more weight, and the weight is actually exponential. Yeah, that is why it's called exponentially weighted average in terms of the weight. You can have multiple moving average at the same time. So you can have double moving average, double simple moving average, double exponential moving average, triple, and so on. So the very basic signal is you want to buy the particular stock when the price actually rises above its moving average, and you want to sell if it goes below that moving average. So this is a very quick example where how do I, yeah, okay, expand panel to show, all right, okay. So you can see this very quick example about Intel Corporation. You can see the price, open, high, low, close, and as well as the volume, and then you plot the 50-day moving average and what happens if it goes below, isn't it? Look again at the simple indicator here, simple signal. You want to buy when the price rises above, okay, and you want to sell when it goes below. So the price is the blue line here, okay. So you can see that when it goes below the moving average, it continues going down, isn't it? And then of course there are some fluctuations there, but of course you're going to expect that the trend for this particular example is it goes down. And then what happens when it goes or it crosses above this particular moving average, then you can see the upward trends there. Okay, so this is the most basic one. I don't expect students, okay, especially you guys as well, don't put high expectation that after this, if you use this particular formula, surely you're going to become multi-millionaires. It's very simple. No, because this one is a very, very basic one. Okay, having said that, lots of traders in Malaysia, they actually use a very simple formula as well. And it works actually most of the time. Why? Because it's the market is again this price, yeah, it's just a forces of supply and demand. Yeah, someone wants to sell, someone wants to buy, and then it hits there, you're gonna transact that particular stock price. So because many people are using the simple formula, so basically it works, but only to a certain extent. Again, keep in mind that you shouldn't expect you're going to become very wealthy or multi-millionaire just by using this particular formula. This is just another example. If you look into the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and then you compare it with a particular moving average. All right. Now, this stock is actually called DIY, isn't it? DIY stock investing. So technically, I should also show you how you want to do it yourself, right? So this is the simple Excel example, yeah. In this particular case, it is actually a monthly data. And then you have the price. Let's say this is a monthly stock price. How do you use this particular moving average? And by now, I think you are familiar with this, yeah? So 3-month moving average, you can use either formula, it's fine by using Excel. Okay, this part here, and then this will be the moving average. Okay. And then this is the same. Okay, you can use this syntax from Excel, which will give you the same thing. So what it means moving average is because the let me erase first. Okay, because this particular next one it moves. Yeah, this one refers to this part because it's a three-month moving average, isn't it? And this part, for example, yeah, would refer to this average of the 3-month prices. So whenever you want to consider the particular signal and the transaction, you should actually look into the buying or selling at the next period, which is what you call the T+1. And if you consider this as T naught, this one will be T+1. I'm sure you as economics degree students are familiar with this notation, isn't it? The naught and one subscript there. Okay, very basic one. If you have any question, please let me know, yeah? So the next one is moving average convergence, divergence. This one is actually a trend following momentum indicator that shows the relationship between two moving averages of prices. Okay, two moving averages of prices, or specifically the exponential moving average. What it means is just it is a difference between this 26-day and 12-day exponential moving average, and then you also plot a 9-day EMA, which you call the signal line. So the developer of this, Gerard Apple, actually specifies this in terms of percentages, where the three moving averages can be described as 7.5, 15, and 20%, respectively. So what it means is that this particular moving average, in terms of practical applications, it is actually most effective in wide swinging trading markets. And the three most popular ways for you to use this indicator is actually in terms of the crossovers. You can also look into the overbought or oversold conditions, as well as the divergence. So the most basic ones, in terms of the indicator signal, is you want to buy this particular stock whenever the MACD indicator, or MACD if you want to call it, rises above its signal line, or you want to sell it when it goes or falls below the signal line. One other way that you can use this is actually to buy or sell when the indicator goes above or below 0. So there are different ways for you to do this. You can actually, as mentioned earlier, use this as an overbought or oversold indicator, where the shorter moving average pulls away dramatically from the longer moving average, and then you can expect that the security price is what you call overextending and will soon return to. So again, DIY, you can look into this Excel. By the way, the reason I'm showing you this, even though you don't need to, is one, the talk is about DIY, right? So you should at least grasp the basic knowledge of these indicators, how you can actually find these indicators and what they mean. Even though if you subscribe to some online trading like with CIMB and so on, I believe they also provide you with access to this online trading platform and some basic technical indicators, isn't it? Where you can just put some indicators or plot some indicators above the prices, like this MACD, RSI, and so on. Having said that, even though you can do that, those things automatically, it is actually important for you to understand the concept first, which is why I'm showing you this stuff. It's like if you want to learn to drive, even though you can drive automatic cars, let's say your parents buy you an automatic car, you should still know how to drive manual cars and understand the concept of changing the gears and so on, isn't it? So that is why if you want to take your license, you have to drive manual cars, and you have to also understand how the oil is needed, the gas, as well as you need to pump the wheels, okay, those kind of stuff, even though you can ask somebody else to do it. So in this particular case, if you use Excel, I believe all of you have Excel, isn't it? So you can, after this, just, after we finish this session, download some free data from Yahoo Finance. You can easily do this as well. It's actually quite fun, yeah? You can put the price, you can put the 12-day EMA, 26, MACD, and the signal there. And this first part is actually the average. And from there, you can actually compute the EMA, all right? These are the syntax there, and then you just copy down. What about the next part? Okay, because this is a C, right? So for the 26-day, it's the same thing. You have to go to the appropriate level of price. Okay, you cannot do the 12-day MA. You cannot start it here, by the way. Why? Because you need at least 12 days, isn't it? Right? So you have to understand this concept as well. So this one is for 26-day. Again, just copy it down. And then for the signal, again, recall that the MACD is just the differences between the two, isn't it? Differences between the 12-day and the 26-day exponential moving average. So since you already have this and this, and then you minus it. You cannot do it here, by the way. Yeah? Again, DIY, you cannot do it here. Why? Because this one is 26th day, isn't it? You don't have the data here yet. So you cannot simply deduct this with this, and then you're going to get 449.823 something. That is wrong. Because this is the starting row where you have both 26-day and 26-day, sorry, 12-day and 26-day EMA. And then you just simply copy it down. All right. And finally, of course, you have the signal lines, which can also be plotted with this 12 and 26-day EMA. So again, same thing, because this is also an EMA, but the signal is normally a 9-day, isn't it? So again, you can just refer to the differences in these averages. So that is how you do it. But of course, if you subscribe to the online trading account, I'm sure you're going to have access to these features as well. But once you understand how they are calculated and what is the basic, okay, the fundamentals behind the calculation, then you have more knowledge and understand how it works and the underlying theory or the justification of why you want to do or use this MACD. So this is how, if you want to plot it on the chart. So again, what is the basic rule there? So one of the rule is you want to sell whenever the MACD falls below the signal line. So you can just compare the 12 and 26-day. You can compare the signal line. And another rule is, of course, you can also buy or sell whenever the MACD goes above or below 0. So you have the 0 line plotted here, isn't it? This is 0. And then you have the MACD there goes above or beyond, go above or below MACD, which can help you to determine buy and sell trading signals. Okay, the next one is RSI. This one is actually an oscillator. What oscillator means is that it actually oscillates, yeah? It moves between 0 and 100. And this one is developed by, again, one of the famous technicians, Wells Wilder. So what it means is just, it is actually an internal strength of a single security, even though it's called relative strength index. The name is somewhat misleading, yeah? Because you are not actually compare. Whenever you say relative, you want to compare something with something else, isn't it? But it doesn't really compare with anything else. It is actually just an internal strength of that particular single security. You can compare, by the way, yeah? You can compare the relative strength of this particular company or particular indices with other indices, and then you would call it comparative relative strength index, okay, or comparative relative strength. So normally you're going to use a 14-day RSI, and the signal is quite simple as well. It is considered overbought whenever the RSI is above 70 and oversold whenever it is below 30. And this can also indicate the level of support and resistance. So what about the signal? Whenever the RSI actually move above the 30 reference level, you can consider it as a bullish indicator. Okay, because oversold, like oversold means that many people already sold it. All right, and it's over. It is too much already. So of course the market, you would expect, will correct it. All right, so you're gonna expect that the price will go up again, and that is the buy signal, and the sell signal is just the other way around. How you want to calculate it? Again, DIY. You can use Excel, very easy. Yeah, you can use Excel. You can have the closing price there. You can calculate the changes between those Sorry, just a sec, yeah. Sore throat. Sorry, I'm not feeling well actually, but yeah, I can continue. Don't worry. um, you can look at the changes, and you can then have columns of only gains and losses. Yeah, like this one. Yeah. So for example, this one is gain or loss. This one is a loss, right? So you don't want to put in this column. You're gonna have it here. This one is gain, okay, is here, loss is here, and so on. This one is loss, isn't it? This is negative, yeah. So this one is a loss. So you can then compute the average gain, and you can also compute the average loss. Again, for ATR, sorry, for RSI, what the the indicator originally is made is using 14-day RSI, but of course you can use other days as well. Okay, but 14-day RSI is the most popular one. So from there you can compute the relative strength as well as the index, and this is just a chart. Okay, you can see the overbought and oversold level. Yeah, so if you compare these things, yeah, if you compare this with the price above, so you can see some of the similarity in terms of the expected trends, right, from this particular RSI indicator. Now, keep in mind as well that normally for season indicators, for season investors, they don't just use one indicator at a time. At least I know, even including myself as well, I don't use just one indicator. So normally we will use several indicators at the same time, yeah, to support whatever findings from one of the indicators. Even in my traders group, the season traders as well, at least they're gonna be using at least two indicators. No one use just one, yeah. So ATR is actually a measure of volatility. This one is a very basic one. Another measure of famous indicator for volatility is actually what's called the Bollinger Bands. So for ATR, it is just can be considered as a component of indicators as well as trading systems. So in simple term, high ATR just means high volatility. When the ATR expands, it actually indicates that there is an increased volatility in the market and vice versa. So again, you can use ATR on its own, but it is not advisable to do so. Normally, you would consider it as part of a larger or broader trading system with other indicators at the same time. So you can see the formulation again, DIY, the true range, yeah. When you compare the daily high versus daily close, you can also compare between the absolute, yeah, absolute figures between the current high and current low, as well as current high versus previous close, or current low versus previous close. And again, you're going to use the 14-day. This is again, yeah, based on the historical findings by the developer of the strategy, which find that 14 days is quite optimal when they want to do this analysis and use this for trading indicators. But this is not permanent, or this is not fixed. Yeah, you can also use other different days in order for you to construct these particular indicators. And this is, you can see the differences, or the comparison between the prices as well as the ATR indicators. I don't want to go into this. This is just an example, because this is charting. Point and figure charts is another famous, very, very basic chart. Now, everything again can be found at your fingertips. Of course, if you have money, then you can subscribe to those paid database such as Bloomberg, DataStream, and so on. But there are also free versions. Even if you look into Bloomberg websites, there are some data there as well. Morningstar, Fund Supermart is very good if you want to look into unit trust data. You can find a historical individual stock price at Yahoo Finance and Google Finance. You can also download some fundamental data from InSage or even Bursa Malaysia website. Now, there are too many indicators. The one that I explained earlier are just very, very basic and popular ones. But as I mentioned earlier, there are too many indicators being used by practitioners. Okay, some of the examples I give there are Bollinger Bands, Slim, Chaikin, Fibonacci, Fourier transform, and stochastic escalators. And there are many others actually, such as ADX, Kalman, momentum indicators, OBV, parabolic indicators, RVI, tricks, Williams R. They are too much, isn't it? And for each of the indicators, you can use different combination and different number of days and so on. So there are literally hundreds of indicators. And when you consider this combination, there are actually thousands of trading systems being used. Yeah. And you haven't even considered big data and AI yet. So when you consider AI, such as neural networks, genetic algorithms, evolutionary algorithms, swamp optimizations, and so on, so there are many other combinations and variations. Now, when you do investments, obviously you want to also consider your performance, right? You cannot only look into the performance in terms of dollar return, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, if you only compare your salary in terms of you drive or you take some delivery from Foodpanda as compared to if you swim across the river, it is not fair, isn't it? Let's say you get 100 ringgit from swimming, fighting with crocodiles, as compared to just sending McDonald burger by driving or riding a motorcycle. It is not really fair for you to compare 10 ringgit with 100 ringgit and you say, it is much better to swim with crocodile because you can earn 100 ringgit. It is not a fair comparison, isn't it? Because swimming with crocodile is much riskier and you might even lose your life. So because of that, the risk is higher and you should actually expect higher income from there, and you have to take into account the risk from swimming with crocodile as well. So because of that, whenever you want to evaluate the performance of your investment, you have to also consider other factors. You cannot only look into the return. So what are the performance measures? So these are some of the simple ones. I think maybe you have heard for some of this, yeah? Alpha and beta, the very basic one. You have the Sharpe ratio. You compare the expected return with the standard deviation of the return. You have Sortino ratio, omega, value at risk, conditional value at risk, information ratio, and so on. There are many performance measures here that really show whether your investment strategy is good or not. And like technical analysis, there are lots of performance measures. These are some of the basic ones that I show this. These are only some of the basic ones. Sorry, very bad handwriting. Other things, such as Sharpe omega, you have Bernardo Ledoux, gain loss ratio. You also have this one is beta. You also have conditional beta. You can have karma ratio, black trainer ratio, M squared. Yeah, M squared is from Modigliani and Modigliani. The one who developed that is actually the grandfather and the granddaughter. Yeah, very interesting. That is why it's called Modigliani and Modigliani, or M squared. Now, just imagine you write a journal article with your granddaughter. So there are many performance measurement whenever you want to evaluate your investment performance. So let's say if I do some investment using technical analysis, let's say my performance, I brag, I say, my performance is actually better than Dr. Zai, for instance. And then Dr. Zai can ask me, is it? And then Dr. Zai can actually show in terms of the Sortino ratio, for instance, her performance is actually better. And we have to, again, in finance, you have to consider both risk and return. You cannot just say your performance is better just because you earn higher profit. So I hope that is clear. So this is just some of the final points. we are at the end of our presentation today. These are very important as well, yeah, these final points. Some of the dangers, yeah, when you want to use technical analysis, people are creatures that like to look at patterns, isn't it? So sometimes we tend to perceive patterns where actually none exists. Another thing that is danger is actually data mining or data snooping bias. Yeah, economists, surely you know this as well. When you have the data and you try to mine using some or whatever models, you might generate some patterns given limited data sets. Another important consideration is whether that rule will be reasonable. You have to also consider the market trend, whether the market is trading or trending, and whether the parameters, yeah, whether it is suitable for you to use 14 days, or maybe you should use 20 days, maybe 30 days. So maybe you have to do some parameter optimization. The data should be from reliable database and of sufficient length. If you want to invest, you cannot just simply look at the past 30 days data and then do some simple moving average and say, this one will give me 1 million ringgit. Okay, it's not sufficient. And then the database should be reliable as well. Don't download from some dodgy websites. Things such as websites such as Yahoo Finance, Morningstars, Bloomberg, and so on are reliable ones. Do not ignore fundamentals. As Dr. Zai also showed earlier, the quarterly report, for example, also have some effect on the prices, isn't it? It shows that investors look at this fundamental information and then they react on this information. And then you can see the patterns from those particular points. For Muslims, of course, don't invest in Carlsberg or um, uh, Berjaya Toto, Genting, and so on, right? Please keep in mind, even though the price or the particular stock can give you good returns, invest in Sharia compliant investments or stocks only. And of course, don't consult um, people who are scammers or selling forex and other stuff. You must consult licensed experts as licensed by Securities Commission Malaysia. Now, about risk management for technical analysis, like I said earlier, you have to put some stop loss and take profit policies. If I can share very briefly, I have a friend recently, a lecturer as well. I don't want to mention his name. He invested in, the first time he invested, yeah. He invested, I think about 20 or 30,000 ringgit in the US market. He bought an option, yeah. This was the first time he invested. He already he began by investing in option, which is a derivative, highly risky, yeah? And it is in the US market. And he lost, I think, about 18,000 ringgit. You just imagine the first time trading already lost 18,000 ringgit. So be careful. You have to put some stop loss strategy. You have to consult licensed expert, look at the data. Don't just simply invest because you think it can give you lots of money. And of course, the final thing is you have to have a very good money management rule. If you want to invest, don't put all 100% of your money in that particular stock. Make sure, okay, the general and simple rule is, for example, you can put, let's say, only 2% or 3% out of your investment funds. So that way, even if you lose 100% of that particular stock, you only lose about 2% or 3% out of your whole investment fund. Okay, so of course, there are many other advanced rules. This one is the most basic one. You can also consider some trading outcome. You can consider Monte Carlo simulation, and I think economic students, you're familiar with Monte Carlo simulation. Yeah? You can actually use Monte Carlo simulation in order for you to determine this policy. All right. So with that, I end my presentation. Thanks for giving me this opportunity to present. And of course, as we always say, segala yang baik itu of course adalah daripada Allah dan yang kelemahan itu daripada saya sendiri. So again, Assalamualaikum and thanks.
Majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Profesor Dr. Safwan atas ilmu yang telah disampaikan sebentar tadi. Tanpa membuang masa, majlis diteruskan lagi dengan menjemput dan mempersilakan Dr. Zairihan binti Abdul Halim untuk menerangkan berkenaan free online tools to analyze and practice trading. Majlis dengan segala hormatnya menjemput dan mempersilakan.
Saya try on video. Kalau slow bagi tahu saya. Terima kasih banyak Dr. Safwan. So the last advice tu memang sangat betul lah, bila kita start trading, maksudnya first time, jangan get emotional dalam market. Mungkin bila you buka platform tu nampak macam berkedip-kedip kan, platform tu hijau merah you macam overwhelmed. Lepas tu tanpa memikirkan risk dia, you terus masuk je, letak duit banyak-banyak and then hangus. So kita kena fikir banyak perkara lah sebelum kita trade tu. Start small tak apa. And then my suggestion would be like Mr. Anwar mentioned, I always encourage students to go to bursa marketplace lah. Kita akan tengok sedikit lah. So you boleh manfaatkan free tools yang reliable. Reliable punya sources untuk you dapatkan maklumat tentang stock dan sebagainya, analyst recommendation. Okay. So I will go quickly. Saya tahu petang-petang memang kita perlu bermujahadah kan. Okay. First thing first is of course bursa marketplace lah, sebab dia memang daripada bursa sendiri. Jadi dekat bursa marketplace ni kita ada screener, kita ada bursa mid, maksudnya middle to small cap And then dia ada juga free course and learning materials, trading camp. Ini yang saya sangat galakkan, dan saya sebenarnya dengan Dr. Safwan dalam rangka untuk maksudnya melaksanakan satu inilah proses untuk kita nak get students get used to trading. Kita akan buat gamification insya-Allah. Later I will create trading game untuk you guys yang join pada hari ini. InsyaAllah you will have the feel to how it feels like to trade. Okay, so saya buka bursa marketplace, dia agak slow sedikit lah, so maybe I should turn off my video kat sini. Okay, so bila you buka bursa marketplace, ini yang you akan nampak kan. So saya galakkan semua yang ada kat dalam ni register, buka an account dekat bursa marketplace. You akan sentiasa dapat update dekat email ya. And then dia ada screener, saya sebut tadi ada screener. Ni dapat
Tak nampak
screener?
Doktor.
Saya tak nampak Saya reshare ya. Okay, now sana. Can you see the page I'm showing now?
Nampak, Dr. nampak.
Okay, nampak.
Okay, so ini dia punya interface lah Jadi dia ada tools, learn ni dia akan bawa ke page Bursa Academy, and tools kita boleh pergi ke screener, dia ada stock rating, dia pun ada pakai sistem alpha indicator, and what's trending, dia punya research report dan sebagainya, list of brokers. So kita nak pergi kat sini dulu screener sebab dalam dekat bursa tu ada 900 plus company. Macam ni kita nak filter company yang bagus fundamentally and dia ada momentum dan sebagainya. So kat sini kita boleh gunalah based on yang Mr. Izham sebut tadi tu kan. So kita boleh pick mana PE value between 10 to 15. The lower PE value is the better. Okay, let's say kita ambil 10 to 15. So share price ini bergantung kepada kita punya modal lah. Kalau kita nak go for cheap punya stock, so kita boleh pilih. Then kalau kita nak stocks yang pay consistent dividend ataupun consistent EPS, maksudnya earnings dia bagus over the years. So kita boleh pilih juga kat sini. So kat sekarang ni kita ada about 150 matches. You klik show result, dia akan list down semua stock yang ni lah. And then dia ada juga recommendation, analyst recommendation kat sini. Kita boleh filter kat situ. Ada yang outperform, ada yang dia indicate jual dan buy sebagainya lah. Dan boleh juga filter ikut harga, listkan ikut harga yang paling murah sehingga yang paling mahal. Itu bursa marketplace. And then another tool yang saya suka tentang bursa marketplace ni yang tak ada pada source yang lain lah, yang kita selalu guna tu adalah game. Kadang-kadang kita boleh nampak ada orang lain yang create game. Jadi kita kena register lah. Kita kena register account dan kita boleh nampak segala features kat sini. Contoh, kita nak join game kan. So kita akan nampak. Nanti kalau saya create game, saya akan bagi link. Siapa yang berminat boleh join sebab dia maximum participants, if I'm not mistaken, is about 150. So banyak ni dia orang create game So yang latest yang ini female versus male macam-macam lah. Ni maksudnya pemilik account masing-masing lah kan dia create. So kita boleh join. Tak ada masalah. So macam mana nak trade? Ni maksudnya practice trading menggunakan virtual capital. Bukan capital yang betul. Virtual capital dulu. Kita nak dapat fee dulu kan. So saya ada join satu trade tadi. Okay. So dia bagi modal kita 5,000. Modal tipu lah. So kat sini kita dah boleh start buy and sell. Contoh hari ni yang hot kat market adalah D-Nex kan. D-Nex. Macam mana saya tahu kata D-Nex? Kalau kita buka portfolio kita akan nampak active trading stocks dekat senarai yang dekat atas kan. So, every time you buy, kenapa you beli, you kena, it's good practice actually to know why you buy that particular stock on that day. So, hari ni dia actively traded kan. And ada good news. Good news. Apa good news ni? Ada investor daripada luar negara nak maksudnya acquire some shares of D-Nex lah, if I'm not mistaken. So, dia punya price sekarang ni, kita boleh klik juga get price. Tapi dia punya ni agak slow sikit lah. So perhaps this one is the latest price lah. Last done price kan. So kat sini 100 quantity. Dia dalam quantity per unit, dia bukan lot kat sini 200. Contoh kita boleh 300 unit. Tapi kalau dalam platform, trading platform yang sebenar, dia quantity ni dalam bentuk satu lot bersama dengan 100. So kalau you nak beli 100 unit, you akan letak berapa? Satu lot kan. Okay. So trade now. Nanti dia akan masuk lah. See? Nampak tak? So you boleh monitor. You can monitor from here. Boleh monitor day by day. You akan tengok berapa untung you dapat. Okay. Harga yang you beli. Dan berapa gain or loss yang you akan dapat. So, you boleh tengok dekat sini. And you can buy some more. Sebab modal kat sini dia bagi 5,000 kan. So, dia dah deduct kat sini. Okay. Itu bursa marketplace. So, insyaAllah nanti saya akan create game tu. Saya akan create game. Saya harap ramai yang berminat untuk participate dalam game tu. Okay. Dan kita ada KLSE Screener. KLSE Screener dia ada app available on Play Store, Apple Store pun ada saya rasa. Dan dia pun juga ada screener FANTA, market information. So KLSE Screener ni yang saya paling suka, dia punya corporate news lah. Memang every like 15 minutes kot ataupun shorter than that, dia ada update news tentang corporate lah, company announcement dan sebagainya. So, dia punya app juga very user friendly. So, this is a must, a must have app dalam you punya phone kalau you nak start trading lah. Another one yang saya buka tadi lah, Malaysia Stock Biz. So Malaysia Stock Biz, saya another page yang saya memang frequently view. Okay, kita tengok contoh. Okay, so bila you buka Malaysia Stock Biz, dia akan tunjuk latest announcement dahulu. PC saya kod ni slow ni. Okay, tak apa. Kadang-kadang dia hang ni. Sebab dia dah kerja kuat beberapa hari. Can you see the page? I'm showing now. Nampak tak?
Nampak.
Okay, so home. Ini yang you akan nampak bila you buka malaysiastock.biz. Jadi yang dia pun ada juga analysis tools Ada screener. So biasalah kalau yang free mestilah ada iklan-iklan ni kan. Dia ada screener juga. So kita boleh screen based on fundamental financial ratios. So ini basically financial ratios lah. Dan dia akan view dekat sini. And then satu lagi yang saya biasa guna adalah untuk search tentang stock lah, particular stock. Saya just type dekat sini. Okay. So mungkin kita nak tengok, tadi kita ada beli next kan, kita nak tengok performance di next. So first, dia akan tunjuk maklumat tentang financial information dahulu. Okay. Dan dia ada shareholding changes, siapa yang sedang beli di next. Okay, kita ada transri. Biasalah you akan nampak lah kata lagi. Macam kenal je nama ni kan. Soalnya ahli politik kita pun banyak terlibat lah dalam bisnes korporat ni. In fact, if not all, most of them are having positions as director dan sebagainya. Okay, so ini performance. So kita boleh pergi dekat technical chart ni. So I totally agree with Dr. Safwan. Memang kita kena combine fundamental dengan technical. Kita tak boleh go for one only. Maksudnya fundamental saja tanpa mengetahui bila kita nak masuk, bila kita nak keluar. So kena combine antara dua tu. Ya. Dia tak boleh juga tengok technical saja. Kalau tengok technical saja, you basically like you are speculating the price kan. So kita go for technical chart kat situ. Okay. So hari ini performance di next dia keluar candle merah kat atas tu Ni candlestick candlestick. So candlestick ni dah lama wujud sebenarnya. Sebenarnya technical ni sendiri dia lagi lama wujud dah lama wujud berbanding dengan fundamental. Macam Dr. Safwan tunjuk tadi tu. Jadi kita nak tengok bila kita buka technical chart, dia memang automatically tunjuk yang oscillator ataupun indicators yang famous, yang memang popular among ni lah. Among analysts, traders and investors yang biasa-biasa rakyat marahim macam saya ni kan. So kita biasa guna di Convergence, moving average, Convergence, Divergence dan relative strength index RSI. So kat mana kita nak tengok oversold itu, so kita combine ni Bollinger Band. Bollinger Band. So ini yang line-line adalah MA MA 10 days, 100 days. So kita tengok dekat mana yang oversold tu. Okay, contoh sini. So bila dia dah mencecah kat sini, dia start cross blue line ni, start cross red line tu dia punya yang okay, blue line, nampak blue line kat sini. Dia cross red line and then MACD akan confirm dia. Ke confirm. So you nampak tak? Ni blue line cross red line kan? Yang okey, nampak ni kita panggil maksudnya ada momentum belian, momentum maksud bullish sign lah. Bullish sign maksudnya harga ada kebarangkalian harga tu akan naik. So boleh nampak tak correlation dekat sini? So ini cross. So ini maksud dia yang ni yang MACD ni dia lagged sikit berbanding dengan RSI. So RSI akan tunjuk dulu dia akan cross kat sini. So and then you nampak kat sini cross. So you boleh tengok ke mana hala tuju harga tu. It's on uptrend kan. So saya nak tunjuk satu lagi stock yang I personally like lah. Orang kata tak boleh suka satu stock tu, jangan jatuh cinta dengan mana-mana stock kan. But I particularly like this stock sebab saya memang dapat few times profits dengan stock yang sama. Saya tak maksudnya saya tak rambang sangat mata tengok banyak-banyak stock. Kalau ada stock yang saya tengok dia punya fundamental dia bagus, dia uptrend. So saya ada masa saya belajar kita kena ada rukun juga lah. Bila kita nak masuk stock, janganlah ambil stock yang downtrend, yang sedang dalam, maksudnya overall dia dalam declining trend. Kita nak stock yang macam ni. Overall dia increasing on increasing trend like this lah. Saya boleh nampak. Memang dia akan zigzag macam tu stock biasalah kan, sebab dia bergantung pada demand and supply. Force of demand and supply. So dia akan ada dia zigzag, moving in zigzag pattern kan. So ni uptrend. Okay, jadi kita boleh tengok kat sini. So saya akan this is one of my watch list lah, but you need to do your own research. Okay, so saya akan target kat mana. So dia sekarang ni dia dalam on declining. Maksudnya belum lagi oversold lah, kita panggil belum lagi oversold. So bila dia oversold kat sini, bila blue line dah start cross red line, you nampak kan? Saya di confirm pula, confirm by MA Convergence, Divergence ni. So bila dia cross, ini kita boleh sebut sebagai golden cross lah. Golden cross. So you nampak tak apa yang berlaku kat atas ni? Harga dia naik. So kat bila you beli, boleh masuk, bila you tahu kat mana you nak masuk, nak beli. Kalau you beli kat sini, harga dia 55 sen. Dia tunggu harga dia sampai mencecah 70 sen katakan. So dah berapa dah you untung? Kalau beli 1000 unit, berapa untung? Saya nak kira untung. 1000 unit, okey. Kalau 55 sen, RM550 kan? Dan you jual kat sini. 70 sen. 70 sen kali 1000 unit, 700 macam tu. Ya? 700. Seberapa untung? 700 tolak 550. Kena tolak brokerage fee lagi. So roughly you akan dapat dalam, ada yang kira kot 100 lebih juga lah kan. So kalau 1000 unit. Kalau beli 3000 unit, lagi banyak lah. So it depends on your capital. But to me, this stock can go further lah. It's a semiconductor stock. You kena kenal company ni. Saya memang, kalau saya suka, saya baca annual report dan saya kenal betul-betul company tu. Saya tahu siapa shareholders dia. Dekat bursa marketplace, kita boleh check ya. Siapa shareholder company tu. Let's say kita nak cari tentang cash tadi tu. Stock rating. Stock rating. I think we can just find here. Okay. KES Group Berhad dia semiconductor. Sebenarnya dia company yang agak baru lah. Okay. Kat sini nampak tak ownership. So kita boleh lihat siapa director dia. Kenapa pentingnya kita melihat director? Berapa banyak director pegang. So kalau lagi banyak holding by director, it's a good sign. Maksudnya director memang sayang company dia. Ingat director ni nak company dia rugi. Okay. Kalau dia So yang besar ni, sebahagian besar dipegang oleh director ni. Chu Ne Weng. Weng ke Weng, saya tak tahulah. So dia saja pegang sebanyak 30%. So we can say that he's gonna make sure that his company is doing well over the years lah. So look for this ah. Kita kena kenal company tu, and financials juga important untuk fundamental. Kita nak tahu. So dia punya average score is 5. It's good lah. So ini contoh saja, bukan, it's not a buy call. Saya tidak boleh bagi tip pun sebab saya bukan license dealer macam Dr. Safwan dan speakers yang pagi tadi. But kita boleh buat judgement sendiri berdasarkan maklumat yang kita ada lah. Okay, setakat ni okay. So investing.com is basically untuk global punya information. So saya juga kerap tengok investing.com sebab kita nak tahu commodity price. Harga minyak sekarang berapa. Harga commodity mana yang naik. Besi ke emas. Sebab kat Malaysia ni kita banyak sectors. Kita banyak sektor. Kita ada sektor besi. Kita ada sektor company yang jual emas. Ada company yang jual timber. Ada macam-macam lah, plastik, chemical dan sebagainya. So kita nak tahu commodity prices like palm oil dan sebagainya. So ke mana hala tuju. Minyak sekarang dah cecah 70 per barrel . Hari ni pun dah 72 macam tu. So dia tengah berlega-lega di area tu. Jadi kita boleh nampak ada sentimen. Mungkin harga minyak akan kata agak stable lah bila dia cecah pada tahap tersebut kan. Dan inflation pula pun semakin meningkat bila harga minyak naik, inflation akan naik. Gold pun bila orang dah maksudnya ada kerisauan tentang inflation, tapi people start to buy golds, and then gold index pun menaik. So itu ada kaitan dia. Dan bila kita tengok ini top bottom approach lah kan, kita tengok apa yang berlaku di US market, Dow Jones, Nasdaq, apa yang berlaku pada saham Apple, dia kadang-kadang dia memang bukan kadang-kadang dia akan affect Malaysia market juga sebab kita adalah open market kan. Sebenarnya semua market di dunia berpaksikan pada pasaran negara-negara maju seperti US, UK, ya. And Smart Robi. So this is an app powered by AI. Dr. Safwan cakap sekarang dah advance, ada AI dan sebagainya kan. So Smart Robi is not a free app, but you can get it free with some trick. Maksudnya kalau you register pakai kata referral code, you akan dapat credit, and then you invite friends to register for Smart Robi, then you get another credits lah. So this app actually available on Play Store, Apple Store pun ada. Dia adalah chatbot powered by AI, dibangunkan oleh satu company di Malaysia. And then it is the first AI powered app in Asia. Sebab saya attend course daripada founder dia sendiri. Okay, nanti saya bagi link, you boleh tengok Facebook dia ataupun dia punya YouTube channel. So ini daripada saya punya phone, saya screenshot. So AI powered app ni kita tak payah nak fikir banyak-banyak. Kalau kita sibuk, kalau kita maksudnya tak yakin dengan diri sendiri, kebolehan diri sendiri untuk analyze stocks, dan kita boleh guna app yang macam ni yang membantulah. So dia ada Pentagon Guider, Premium Alert dan sebagainya. So bila kita klik Pentagon Guider, dia akan tunjukkan mana stocks yang kita dah boleh start masuk. Dia akan keluar contoh e-wind kan, Eco World International. So bila you buka platform nanti, you akan nampak kod saja, stock code. So you should search for that code. Kenal nama company tu, jangan kenal nama kod saja. Kena kenal company. Kena tahu financially strong ataupun tidak. So contoh dia keluarkan Pentagon, green Pentagon untuk e-wind kan. So saya dah trace e-wind ni dah beberapa hari. Memang sebenarnya saya beberapa kali lah saya cuba test pakai app ni. Dia menjadilah, kebanyakan yang menjadi. Dalam tempoh seminggu, 2 minggu, dia akan start, dia bagi bullish sign Pentagon Guider. So dia akan trace stocks tu sampailah kalau dah hampir-hampir orang dah overbought kan. Tadi oversold. Oversold kalau dekat Malaysia Stock Biz kita boleh tengok kat mana oversold tu. Betul pula overbought kan. Overbought ni sini bila blue kita kata red line semakin kata on a declining punya ni lah pattern kan. Red line cross blue line ke. So and then ini pun semakin menurun. So ini overbought dekat sini. Ya, dia akan masuk cycle bearish sekejap. Kemudian akan bullish balik. So itu cycle yang biasalah. Jadi this app akan tunjuk kat mana you patut keluar. You perlu tarik you punya modal. So dah cukup dah. Kalau you dapat untung 20-30% ke, so dia akan keluar red pentagon Kalau bullish dia akan keluar green. So pentagon guide ni setiap hari dia memang setiap hari. Selepas pukul 5.30 petang dia akan update pentagon guide. And then kalau kita tak puas hati, takkanlah nak base kepada pentagon signal je kan. So kita nak tahu juga stock fundamental pun ada. Trading plan bila you patut masuk, bila you patut keluar. And then news for e-win dan sebagainya. Memang sangat informatif lah. Sangat handy, sangat convenience guna Smart Robin ni. Okay. So yeah, that's it from me. Asyita.
Majlis merakamkan jutaan terima kasih kepada Dr. Zairihan atas ilmu yang telah disampaikan sebentar tadi. Kini, majlis membuka sesi question and answer. Para pelajar boleh membuka mikrofon untuk bertanyakan soalan atau meninggalkannya di ruangan chat. Di sini ada satu soalan. Doktor nak tanya kalau tengah declining tu kan better kita tunggu atau jual sebab nanti dia akan naik balik, cuma tunggu masa je.
Dr. Safwan boleh jawab tak? Are you speaking, Dr. Safwan? Tak dengar. Hello.
Zai, rasanya line Dr. Safwan lah.
Safwan like ni kot bunyi dengar slow je. Tak apa, kita tunggu Dr. Safwan fix dulu. It depends on your punya trading plan sebenarnya. Trading plan, you target berapa? You kena ada target. You jangan tunggu, maksudnya you masuk. Lepas tu dia dah start nak kita kata overbought kan. Bila overbought dia dah naik banyak, you tak rasa gayat ke? Saya rasa saya suka guna perkataan gayat. Bila dia naik banyak-banyak, barangkali untuk diturun, untuk direhat kejap, pull back ke, retrace ke, tinggi lah. So kita kena ada target berapa untung yang kita nak ambil kalau kita trade. Dia jangan menunggu-nunggu. But kalau you punya preference ada long term, you nak go for long term maksudnya 6 bulan dan ke atas. If you trust that stock like macam Mr. DIY ataupun 30 company dalam FBM KLCI tu kan. Contoh, kita boleh tengok kat sini. So kita pergi dekat Malaysia Stock Base tu kan. Kita nak tahu siapakah komponen-komponen company-company yang berada di dalam indeks FBM KLCI tu. Market. Go to market. Ini bukan ni top active, top volume ni. Sini.
Zai, is it based on instinct juga ke?
Dia not instinct, dia guna indikator yang Dr. Safwan ada sebut tadi tu. Kalau Dr. boleh tengok, maksudnya kan. Okey, syarat kalau ikut saya, rukun pertama dia mesti dalam kita kata pattern uptrend macam ni. Kita tak nak yang pattern downtrend. Contoh sebagai yang downtrend. Celevest is a solar company. Tapi dia dah start.
Dr. share slide ke?
Sorry, kejap. Okay. So, kita tak nak company yang macam ni Kalau kita yang long term kita percaya company sebab Celevest dia renewable energy solar kan. Prospek solar memang besar sebab Joe Biden, US President pun dia memang favor sangat dengan solar. Tapi kalau kita short term investor, kita nak untung cepat, kita tak sanggup menunggu, tak nak tengok capital kita hangus ataupun tak nak tengok loss yang besar. So kita avoid counter yang dia macam ni. Tunggu, kalau nak tunggu, kena tunggu dia buat uptrend balik lah. Jadi, cari counter ataupun stok kan. Kalau saya sebut counter tu masih stok lah tu. Stok yang dia punya trend overall adalah uptrend. Walaupun you nampak tu turun tu memanglah. Dia memang macam ni pattern dia zigzag stocks. Tapi overall dia increasing trend. Nampak tak? So kat sini bila you masuk, kita nak tahu kat mana kita boleh masuk tu, kita masa ni dia dah naik agak banyak kan. So kebarangkalian dia nak rehat kejap, dia nak turun balik tu tinggi lah. So nampak tak dia punya indikator RSI kat bawah ni pun dah semakin declining kan. Maksud dia dah overbought lah kan, overbought sini. So ini pun kita boleh monitor. Semua bila terlalu tinggi, kadang-kadang kita dia punya lagi tinggi price, lagi tinggi risiko. Bila dah berada tahap inilah. So kita nak masuk bila dia dah pullback, dia buat pullback balik. Saya contoh macam kat sini kan. So kita tahu dia tengah turun-turun kejap, dia pullback. So bila sampai dia dah masuk region ni, kita tunggu dulu. Bila start turun macam ni, kita tunggu sampai dia dah oversold. Ini oversold Dr. Mayra dan semua. Dia oversold. Bila blue line tu dah start cross. Start cross red line. So kita boleh masuk kat sini. Nampak tak? Ini. So sini. Blue line dah cross. Kita panggil golden cross lah kat sini. So di sini baru berapa? 6% macam tu. So bila dah cross, dia akan naik. Dia ada momentum tu naik. Itu bullish sign. So nak jual bila? Dia jual bila dia dah start slow macam nak turun. Macam ni kan. Okay. Dan kita jual lah. So jangan tunggu dan lihat saja. Kita kena take action. Kita kena ada target berapa untung yang kita nak dan berapa risk yang kita sanggup tanggung. Okay. Boleh ke?
Okay, thank you.
If combination. Ya, betul. Just why Safwan ada respon kat situ. Saya pun tak suggest BTST. Saya try juga sajalah cari pasal kan BTST. A few times juga saya make losses. BTST is very risky dan keadaan pasaran sekarang juga volatile. So better kita look for stock yang trend dia menaik dan bila dia dah oversold, kadang dekat trading platform kan bila you masuk trading platform ada certain kita kata brokers ataupun banks, investment banks yang dia bagi signal tu. Sama ada stok tu yang mana yang bullish, yang mana yang RSI oversold, MACD crossover ada. Saya rasa mungkin CJS CIMB ada kot. Kalau UOB ada, RHB ada, Kenanga pun ada. Okay.
Terima kasih Dr. Zairihan. Ada lagi yang ingin bertanyakan soalan?
Gitri ada tanya tu, Gitri tanya platform Bursa Malaysia tu free sahaja. So yang saya tunjuk basically kat dalam ni semua yang you boleh guna free. Boleh start lukis-lukis chart juga dekat situ. Okay.
Ada lagi ke soalan? Kita tunggu sebentar ya.
Oh, ataupun kita boleh demo macam mana nak buat screening stocks ke? Kalau ada yang nak saya repeat. Kalau dah sampai price overbought, oversold, lebih baik kita tunggu trend atau trust buy and sold. Seperti kita tahu market always 50-50. Ni persoalan atau pernyataan. Kalau overbought, bila dah overbought, so dia akan pull back. Harga tu dia akan pull back. Dia akan pull back ataupun retrace kejap lah. So it depends actually. Kalau itulah dia investment ni dia ada strategi. Maksudnya dia ada time horizon yang mengikut preference masing-masing. Kalau you nak menyimpan dalam saham, melabur dalam saham, macam tadi Miss Bazila ada sebut, ada klien dia beli Apple kan. Dia beli Apple. Saham Apple sikit demi sedikit, dia tahu Apple memang over time dia memang saham yang uptrend, sentiasa menaik sebab sentiasa ada permintaan terhadap iPhone dan gadget-gadget daripada Apple kan. So daripada you simpan duit nak beli iPhone, mungkin you boleh simpan duit beli Apple. Nanti bila dapat untung, jual beli iPhone pula. Okay. So it depends actually. Ya, supporting indicator yang Dr. Safwan sebut tu. Tu yang paling simple bila kita buka malaysiastock.biz tu dia akan tunjuk yang basics lah. Okay, yang basics itu MACD, RSI, Bollinger Band. Okay. Dan sebenarnya banyak indicators. Tapi yang saya dah guna, saya tak guna banyak sangat, saya guna RSI dengan MACD tu pun alhamdulillah dah boleh buat untung sebenarnya. Syarikat yang uptrend, yang fundamental dia bagus, maksudnya dia memang buat untung. Okay, company yang untung, jangan cari company yang rugi. Yang maksudnya quarterly report dia tak bagus. Okay. Dan PE dia rendah. PE advisably kalau ikut financial advisors below 10 lah, 10 and below lah. Ataupun kalau ni pun ada juga PA yang besar tapi dia masih lagi ada momentum So kena combine banyak-banyak indikator macam Dr. Safwan sebut. Dan you kena selalu tengok news juga. Kadang-kadang bila ada news tertentu tentang company ataupun tentang prospek sektor tertentu, confirm. Bukan confirm lah, almost 50% above stock company tu dia akan gerak. Selalu kalau ada good news, kita tengok esok tu apa jadi kat company saham tu. You boleh dah tengok dekat Malaysia Stock Biz kan. Okay. Baru ni ada news, very bad news tentang Serba Dynamic, syarikat oil company. Kalau saya boleh tengok, saya boleh tunjukkan. Kalau saya boleh share kejap. If you sanggup tunggu. Kita tengok Serba Dynamic. Aktif juga hari ni. Aktif tidak semestinya aktif tu untung. Aktif rugi pada aktif selling. Nampak tu. Terjun dengan dahsyat ni sekali sebab ada bad news tentang company ni. Sebelum ni dia punya harga saham dia quite stable. Harga mahal sebenarnya. RM1.80 satu unit. Dan dia it used to be an uptrend stock contoh. Kemudian bila PKP pump dia jatuh kejap dan dia naik sikit dan dia buat consolidation. Ini kita panggil consolidation phase kat sini Dia tak ada arah naik turun. Tapi bila keluar news, dia goreng dia punya account. Dia cook the book Ada kita panggil accounting scandal. Terus macam ni. Gap, kita panggil gap down ni. Tak ada in the kita kata proper pattern, terus spark jatuh. Kembali kepada value asal dia lah. So di sini dia sebenarnya dah overvalue. Bila keluar news tu terus jatuh ke lantai. So kena hati-hati jugalah, kena tengok news juga. Banyak perkara yang kita kena perhatikan Tadi Miss Bazila ada sebut tentang Samaidin. Kalau siapa-siapa ingat, Samaidin ni adalah IPO tahun bila? Tahun lepas. So harga asal dia masa first listing tu dalam 7-9% lah kan. Waktu dia turun kejap dan sekarang dia dah uptrend. Ni pun solar company juga. Company yang provide solar products So sekarang dia dalam consolidation phase lah. Sekarang nilai dia, harga dia RM11.57. Dia punya fundamental pun dia quite good lah. Okay. Saya rasa itu sahaja lah kot.
Okey Zai, saya ada persoalan lah mungkin boleh mewakili student. Saya nampak ada di chat box ada yang confusing between the stocks and forex. So mungkinlah Zai sendiri as a lecturer boleh bagi pemahaman kepada beginners ni. Forex ni macam mana? Saya nampak dah Dr. Safwan ni respon. Boleh ya Zai?
So forex saya memang sekepala pula. Sependapat lah dengan Dr. Safwan. Kita pun ada juga bincang. Saya dengan Dr. Safwan, Dr. Suhail sekali. Memang kalau fatwa sudah ada fatwa yang jelas tentang forex dari peringkat mufti, Majlis Mufti Negara Nasional, memang tidak halal lah, haram. Okay. Ya, so bila dah ada option yang halal macam stocks, kenapa kita nak pergi kepada forex? The forex actually you are trading the currency. You are trading currency, okay? Terima kasih Prazura. So jelas ada fatwa. So dia bukan syubhah lagi forex. Sebab dia dah ada fatwa di peringkat tertinggi. Dan di negara lain pula pun ada fatwa yang sama. Diharamkan untuk Muslim. Okay. Memang sebab sekarang ni banyak sangat iklan. Saya tahu Okta lah apa benda. Semasa iklan untuk forex punya tu. Kalau kripto, yes, berbeza pendapat Dr. Safwan. Dia incline to say macam tak boleh kan. Tapi kita ada perbezaan pendapat lah. Kalau benda syariah seperti Dr. Daud Bakar, kalau dia kenal, maksudnya dia membenar kepada dia tak apa, boleh kripto. Kalau you beli untuk simpan, it's okay lah. Untuk long term, it's fine. Okay.
Terima kasih Dr. Zairihan, Dr. Safwan. Ada pertanyaan? Ada pertanyaan lagi ke? Jika tiada, sebelum mengakhiri majlis, izinkan saya untuk menjemput Profesor Dr. Mahira binti Kamaluddin selaku Ketua Bidang untuk menyampaikan ucapan penutupan majlis. Majlis mempersilakan.
Okey, Assalamualaikum, selamat petang dan salam sejahtera kepada semua para pelajar yang hadir pada petang ini dan juga para penceramah saya kira sangat berpengalaman, berpengetahuan dalam bidang untuk hari inilah. So saya mengucapkan terima kasih terlebih dahulu kepada penyertaan, saya kira agak ramailah daripada para pelajar yang mana webinar ini sendiri adalah dari permintaan para pelajar sendiri. So hari ini banyak benda yang kita belajar. Saya sendiri akan put myself as a beginner. Saya memang I don't have any knowledge regarding investment, tapi setakat teori yang kita belajar in macro, in micro is very simple. Tapi yang daripada permulaan Dr. Zah bermula dengan investment, in stock, kita pergi kepada fundamental, kita pergi kepada technical, is very clear. Hopefully membuka peluang kepada para pelajar dan memberi pendedahan kepada kita sendirilah. Okey, terlebih dahulu juga saya mengucapkan berbanyak terima kasih kepada semua uruster yang bertungkus lumus memastikan perjalanan program pada hari ini berjalan dengan lancar, terutamanya kepada Dr. Zairihan melaksanakan engagement bersama pihak CIMB sendiri, Dr. Jaha selaku penyelaras NREC, Presiden NREC Hafiz yang mana banyak kontak regarding on your proposal sehingga kita capai ke tahap inilah. Terima kasih tidak terhingga kepada speaker kita, Dr. Safwan, kawan saya, Dr. Zai, berkongsi input pada hari ini. So saya mengharapkan menjadi harapan saya sendiri agar peluang ini digunakan sebaik mungkin membuka mata dan you all boleh mula mengorak langkah yang lebih jelas lah. So hari ini kalau saya rasa kalau permulaan saya sendiri nak start dengan trade game ni macam mana kita nak buy, macam mana nak sell, boleh to get the feeling lah. So hopefully apa yang kita pelajari ini bermanfaat. So belajar sedikit sebanyak lah. Kita tahu Bursa Malaysia and everything today. So saya nak mengucapkan sekali lagi terima kasih dan penghargaan setinggi-tingginya kepada yang terlibat. Maka dengan lafaz bismillah, saya dengan rasminya menutup program webinar DIY Labur Saham Bursa hari ini. Semoga kita dapat berjumpa di platform lain dan di program webinar yang lain yang lebih bermanfaat untuk kita kongsikan dan polish you punya skill. InsyaAllah. Sekian, terima kasih.
Ribuan terima kasih diucapkan kepada Dr. Mahira binti Kamaluddin atas ucapan penutupan sebentar tadi. Maka dengan ini berakhirlah sudah program webinar DIY Labur Saham di Bursa. Majlis mengucapkan jutaan terima kasih kepada semua pihak yang terlibat dalam menjayakan majlis ini sama ada secara langsung maupun secara tidak langsung. Sebentar ya, kita tunggu azan tepatnya kita ambil gambar. Sebelum kita berpisah, para hadirin sekali lagi diminta untuk membuka bahagian kamera bagi sesi bergambar.
Sementara kita tunggu pelajar buka gambar, saya ada announcement sedikit daripada pihak CGSCIMB. Mereka akan launch satu trading account yang CDS account juga, trading account yang menggunakan cash. So bila you buka account tu, you guna duit sendiri. Dia bila trading ni kita boleh guna collateral ataupun margin daripada bank ataupun kita pun dan partly duit kita sendirilah. Tapi saya galakkan semua guna duit sendiri sebab nanti kalau you guna margin tu takut nanti you buat losses, you susah sikit lah. So kita nak betul guna cash, duit sendiri. Okay, nanti dia akan provide link, akan buat training juga. Okay, itu sahaja.
Sebentar ya, kita tunggu rakan-rakan yang lain. Boleh buka kamera masing-masing untuk sesi bergambar. Jika sudah bersedia, Amin boleh ambil gambar.
Okay, ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. Jap. One more. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, dah.
Terima kasih Amin.
Okay.
Bunga dedap di atas para anak dusun pasang pelita. Kalau tersilap tutur bicara, jemari disusun, maaf dipinta. Saya bagi pihak majlis memohon kemaafan sekiranya terdapat sebarang kekurangan sepanjang mengendalikan majlis ini. Sebelum kita, maafkan saya, sekian sahaja daripada saya. Nama seterlebih awal pengacara majlis atau hadir anda. Yang baik datangnya daripada Allah dan yang buruk datangnya daripada diri saya sendiri. Sekian, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih semua pelajar yang hadir sampai ke petang.
Terima
Semoga
kasih
bermanfaat
semua.
insya-Allah.
Terima kasih Doktor.
Terima kasih bagi komitmen ya hari ini. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih.
Thank you Dr. Zai. Thank you Dr. Mahira.
Um,
Thank you, Doctor.